Mr. Chairman, last time you were here, we spoke about the labor share of income and why more profits aren't going down to regular workers. Today, I'd like to explore a related concept on economic mobility. On that front, I'd like to say that I'm pleased to be chairing next week a hearing of the Economic Policy Subcommittee with Senator Cortez Masto, the ranking member, on economic mobility and whether the American dream is in crisis. There was an interesting article today in the Wall Street Journal, based in part on your semi-annual report, that mentions the record expansion surprise winner, the low-skilled. And it talks about how so many people who had been on the sidelines have gotten back into the economy, including some of the groups that you've mentioned that traditionally have been hurt the worst in recessions, minorities or the youth, disabled, and so forth. But it also says that it takes, on average, 8 years for less educated workers to recover the wages they lost in a recession. That's much shorter for college-educated or even those more highly educated. So, Mr. Chairman, I want to get your take on whether upward mobility depends in part on strong economic recoveries making it all the way into the 8th or even the 9th inning, so to speak. And are we currently in that state of this recovery, the 8th or the 9th inning, maybe even in extra innings?
The good news is, I think that we are in those innings and we are seeing that, and it's very gratifying to speak to people in low and moderate income communities who work there or live there or both, and have them say that they haven't seen a labor market like this really ever. And it's very, very tight, and that means employers are looking through all kinds of blemishes on resumes and hiring people, and they're training people up and things like that. So that's really good. That's the good news. The bad news is, as that box indicates, that started about 8 years into this recovery. So that isn't really a great national strategy, is to wait 8 years into it. We don't have that many recoveries, expansions rather. We need, we need a better strategy than that, because it's working now, but ultimately, the last time we had an expansion this long was 50 years ago. They don't tend to last this long. It also underscores, again, how important it is for us to keep this going, because a couple of more years of this, it's going to be very beneficial to those communities.
So I want to highlight your remarks a couple months ago at a Federal Reserve conference. You noted that the widening gap in economic status and prospects between those without a college degree and those with a college degree and those without one. So I'll quote more directly from your speech to illustrate just how wide that gap has become. In the 1960s, well over 90% of working-age men held a job, and there was very little difference in employment between those with or without a college degree. While the share of college-educated working-age men with a job has fallen from more than 95% in 1967 to around 90% in 2017, it has plunged for others. 95% of male high school graduates were working in 1967, but only about 80% of them were working in 2017. Among working-age men without a high school diploma, about 90% had a job in 1967 versus a bit more than 70% in 2017. That is a pretty stark difference between men with a college degree on one hand and men without one on the other hand. What, in your opinion, explains this new situation, Mr. Chairman?
So the way I think about this is that what's really a couple of major trends have been happening, and those are really globalization and the advance of technology. And for many of us, both of those things are advantages. If you're on the right side of those trends, probably this is the best time in human history for you. But there are people who, because they don't have the training and the skills and the background to benefit from advancing technology, then they fall on the other side of the divide, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing similar patterns, maybe not as extreme, but similar patterns in other advanced economies that have faced the same challenges. So at the end of the day, it comes down to an educational system and a society that produces people who have the skills and aptitudes to benefit from technology, increasing technology, more complicated technology. And when you have that, you can have declining inequality and widespread prosperity. Without it, it will be very hard to achieve.
Sounds to me like if, say, China had a completely open market for American manufactured goods for the last 30 years, but completely foreclosed the American market in investment banking and management consulting, we might be hearing a different tune out of those who are on the right side of globalization right now. I won't ask you to comment on it, though. I will note, though, that I think immigration plays an important role here. In the period of time you were talking about, from the 1950s to the late 1990s, less than 10% of the American workforce was foreign-born. Right now, we are reaching a point of our highest in over a century. And I think it's important that we focus on immigration policy, too, as a role that it plays in blue-collar, working-class jobs, something we'll explore next week on the Economic Subcommittee. Thank you.